Will it run? Well, yeah, I know it's going to run. It's been a year since we've even started this thing. She's been sitting here patiently waiting her turn. But Plan Z is finally going to the track tomorrow. Got the dog sitter sit. The weather looks good. We're going to take a crack at the track. So far this year has not been bad. Plan Z has been out. Not the results we really wanted, but at least we know what we need to do with that. Bottle Rocket, the curse is finally broken on Bottle Rocket. So now it's just steps forward from there. And now this thing. And this has been a problem child for a lot of years. Long before we did YouTube, before we started doing YouTube. And one of the things with this car is that I've never actually told the whole story behind it. There's a story behind this thing goes back, it's 2023, 1987. The story behind this car goes back 36 years to when I was doing Cars Illustrated magazine. So back in the 80s, I wrote for a boatload of car magazines, and one of them was Cars Illustrated. I threw a lot of effort at Cars Illustrated. So at one point, I had pitched an idea to the editor. He says, let's do a project where we take a car, right? We're gonna grab something cheap and run $12.99 for a total investment of $1,299. There was no real significance to the $12.99 number, except that back in the day, if you had a car that could, in the 80s, if you had a car that could dip into the 12s, it was considered to be a hot car. A lot has changed since the 1980s. And the $12.99 number, well, you know, it fits. $12.99 for $12.99. So that's what we did. So we go out and we pick up a 70 Roadrunner, 3-3 4-speed car. And you have to remember that back in the day, those things, they were cheap. They were still in junkyards. People were still just driving them as regular cars. We picked up a 70 Roadrunner, 3-3 4-speed. And then over the course of a couple of installments, we did all sorts of stuff to it. We did headers and picked up some slicks for it, and just all of the typical stuff that you would do to a car. And we did it all budget minded. We did it all with used parts and swap meet parts. Really, it's the same stuff we do today on this channel, where it's just we just work with junk just to see what can be done, show what can be done with just using like your imagination and a little bit of scrounging. Some things never change. All right, so we do this story. And it goes over pretty big. People loved the story. They loved the concept of it. We never met our goals. We never actually met the goals. If I remember correctly, we ended up going like 13-12 or whatever it was. We ended up running like 13-12. It was close, but we ended up putting rods out of the motor. What are you gonna do? It was a 3D3 with probably 200,000 miles on it. You know, it was close enough for government work. People said yes. And the project, the story got it grew legs. A lot of people were talking about it. Very popular. All right, so now fast forward 30 or 20, I don't know, 28 years to 2015. 2015. So now I'm not doing magazines, I'm not doing racing, I'm not doing anything. I have no connection with, I'm in the parts business. All I do is I sell Mopar parts. So I get contacted by an investor, a person who well known in the industry, in the automotive industry. But I get contacted by this person saying, I want to buy the rights to Cars Illustrated magazine, the lock, stock, and barrel, all of the old stories, the title, and the whole 10 yards. And I'm like, it doesn't affect me, you know, do whatever you want to do. Because at the time I was a writer for that magazine. I got paid freelance. So I got paid, and whatever they do with the story afterwards, I could care less. So he says, I want you to be a part of it. And I'm like, nah, I'm just not into it. I don't want to write. I don't want to do any of that stuff. He says, this could be really big. He says, we're going to create an online presence. We're going to do a website with message boards and the whole bit. And we're going to try to format it sort of like the Yellow Bullet. And I'm like, okay, you kind of got my interest a little bit. You know, this sounds interesting. And he says, and we have TV connections. He says, if this thing goes, if it works, we have an in with a TV network that'll pick this up and run it as a series, right? As like a magazine show. And it was a very well-known company. So I'm like, okay, let's try this. Because, I mean, what the hell? So we start laying out the editorial package for this website, and I get a request from this investor that says, do a redo of the $12.99 for $12.99. It's perfect for the, it's the perfect thing for this website, perfect to get it started. It's right there. So I says, you know what? Let's do that. Let's do $12.99 for $12.99. Never mind 30 years of inflation. Forget about that. It makes no difference. But let's do $12.99 for $12.99. And since I'm in the Mopar parts business, I have access to all kinds of stuff. Not exclusive things. Anybody could go out and buy these cars or these parts at the time, right? This is 2015. And everything I bought was off of either Craigslist, anything that I had at the time for my parts business was purchased off of Craigslist or Facebook or whatever forums I would hunt looking for cars and parts. So I wasn't doing anything extraordinary. It's just that I happened to be in the Mopar parts business, so it was a no-brainer for me. Even if this thing doesn't work, I got parts to sell. So let's do it. So with that, I pick up this Dart. It's actually a 69. It's titled as a 69. I have a 67 grill in it, and I filled in the marker lights, so it looks like a 67, but it's actually a 69. And this thing is roached. The whole back of the car is literally missing. The quarters were decent, but the floor, the trunk lid, everything, literally missing. It had sat for however long, decades, with groceries in the trunk. And the groceries over time rotted. There were salt containers, the big salt containers for the kitchen. There were 3 of them in there, and they had all busted open, and the whole back of the car had been soaked in salt. So like any sheet metal that was left, let's say from the driver's seat back, had the consistency of like potato chips. All right, so this car is absolutely worthless. It's the perfect foundation to do this $12.99 for $12.99 thing. So I says, you know what? I'm going to do this. It would be too easy to just take a 340 or a 3D3 or 440, whatever it is, and drop it in this car. It's just too easy, right? And it's too, it's been done 1,000 times. And at the time, one of the bigger channels, one of the, that everybody knows, I'm not going to mention them, was doing like a 440 Dart. So I was like, no, too easy. I'm going to do it with a Slant 6. And I'll just put nitrous on it. So what I'll do is I'll strip the hell out of the car, fabricate a back section for it so that it's, it's complete again, and build a Slant 6 and throw like 100 horse shot at it. And this will go $12.99, and I'll be able to keep the total investment under $12.99. Well, that's about as far as it really got. The launch of the website didn't go as planned. Nothing went as planned. Everything got a little too weird, and I says, I'm not into this. Goodbye. So I walked away from that, but I still have the car. And it sat in my backyard. Well, wait. I ran it a couple of times without nitrous, just to get a baseline on it, and was very disappointed. The car didn't run the way I wanted to, but in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, I can always spray it, and it'll do the numbers I want it to do. But it sat, and it sat, and it sat, and it sat, and it sat. And then we started doing this channel. And I says, you know what? I want to revive this car. And this is where it got the Plan Z name, no longer $12.99 for $12.99. And I really have no interest in doing it with nitrous or a supercharger or a turbocharger, because those things are all done. There are many Slant 6s out there that run single-digit quarter miles with nitrous, with turbochargers, and every type of power that you can imagine. But in my mind, in me, because it's just me, right? It's not how fast you go, it's how you go fast. So if I was to spray this thing, or if I was to put a turbocharger on it, all I'm really doing is showing how durable the Slant 6 could be, but not how much power I can make with the Slant 6. So I decided to go 100% naturally aspirated and just see how fast I can go. The fastest normally aspirated Slant 6 cars out there are way deep in the 11-second zone in the quarter mile. So that's my ultimate goal with this car. So we ran it a couple of times. We took it to the Slanted Nationals. Made 4 runs with the car, and it was off. The car was fast, but it was slow. So couldn't get it off the starting line. Made no power off the starting line. Carburetor issues. And I had a vacuum secondary carburetor on it also. And so it was never opening the vacuum secondaries, like with the lightest spring in there. Every trick I could think of to get the secondaries to open with vacuum, it didn't work. So I made like 4 passes there. They were all very disappointing, not representative of how the car actually runs, how the seat of the pants is. Because you can feel it when you drive the car, you feel that it has the acceleration rate, the seat of the pants, to make the numbers that I wanted to make. But it doesn't produce the numbers, the actual numbers, because it didn't get off the starting line and I couldn't power through the finish line. So it was like the ETs were pointless. They were throwaways. I couldn't learn anything from them. I never established the baseline. So with that, I went from a vacuum secondary carburetor to a 650, a double pump, double feed 650. With the help of Andy Wood, Unity Motorsports Garage, I got a good tune on the carburetor. We did a lot of stuff. Actually, you can go back, we have the videos, just search Plan Z carburetor, and there are videos restricting idle feeds and all sorts of other things. And it really came around. And the top end power issue went away also, because mechanical secondary now, so it just goes. So the car has not been back to the track since we made those changes. And now I'm anxious to get this thing out there and see what it's going to do. I seriously doubt we're going to get anything in the 7-second zone. Tomorrow, 760 would be like an 1190 or thereabouts, and I would be content with that. I know there's no prayer of going that fast with this car tomorrow, but if I can get anything in the middle 8s, it'll give me a baseline to tune from. So that's the goal for tomorrow. 850, 860, 870, anything in that range. And like I said, we get a couple of runs and we can start tuning and diagnosing and figure out where we go from there. So what I'm going to do now is, I have not started this car since last April. So I've already poured gas in it, I already put a battery in it, and I'm going to put you guys on a tripod, and I'm just going to light it up and warm it up and just make sure that everything is copacetic so that we can run it tomorrow. So let's do that. Just making sure it's not dripping anything in the boosters. There it goes. Well, that ought to do it. I hope. All right. So I'm just going to do the tire pressure, make sure it's topped off with brake fluid, transmission fluid is all good, and tomorrow we send it. Let's see what she does. I'll see you tomorrow.